Fun shirt you got there, Marshall.
I know. Thank you. I like this one.
Why be boring, you know?
Right. Keep us all awake.
When is it time to start measuring snowfall? Is it about this time?
Yep.
Okay. Well, here we are. It is 10:30. Let's call this meeting to order if everyone is here.
Yeah, real quick, Councilmember Sundberg, because
Yes,
of, I guess we're having some IT issues, and so I'm on my cell phone, so I won't be on camera because I can't log into my computer, but just, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know, Councilmember Gardner.
Yep.
Are there any approval or excuse me, any changes to the minutes needed? Any amendments?
Nothing for me.
Okay, minutes are approved. Moving on to item number 2, consent items. The 11/16/22 construction change order report by Steve Fiore. Hi, Steve.
Hi, good morning, everyone. IT issues on my side as well. Casey's having to mute and unmute me today, and my video feed's not working, but short and to the point here, no new change orders to report this month. It's been quiet the last couple months, which has been good. And I think just from a yearly trend, it's been nice to see that beginning of the year, we were running about 2% change orders, and now we're below 0.5%, which we have never been this low. So I'm actually very excited. And, I've been thanking all the PMs for their hard work and really keeping the change orders down this year. So we've had a good year despite all the struggles and challenges with supply chain issues and increasing costs and all that. So again, happy to report nothing new this month and a pretty successful year as far as change order management. So that's all I had today.
Great, congratulations on that trend, Steve. Item 2B, John Murphy for a water supply update.
Good morning, Councilman, everybody. Well, you have the report. What can I say? I didn't include the snow telegraphs for 2 reasons. They hid them. They changed the website, and it took me a long time to find them again. But there's some snow showing up on the snow telegraphs right now, but it's very, very early. So I will include them in the November report so we can see where we're at there. But obviously we're not where we'd like to be in terms of storage right now. We're certainly in that time of year where we're simply using water. There's no yields coming in, so that'll be the continued trend until the runoff season starts. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions, Councilmember Gardner?
Yeah, I do have one. So obviously precipitation, snow, rain impacts water supply, but what impact does temperature have? And I'm asking in the context of what I've been reading is the prediction is for a dry but cold winter. Does a colder than average temperatures help that water supply go further, or is there not any correlation there?
And I'm not sure if Marshall wants to take a first stab at that, or John and I could probably both answer that.
I will say yes, temperature does affect water supply, probably, well, not probably, more in the summer than the winter. So the warming trends when plants are active, we see higher evaporation and higher evapotranspiration, which is the bigger impact. So the plants suck up and evaporate more of the water supply. So that's the warming side. The cold can have an effect on water supply, not as marked as the warmth, but how quickly and hard the soils freeze affects runoff. And Probably more than temperature, though. Wind will affect us too. So if we have a cold but kind of calm winter, we don't get as much. What's the when it evaporates, the snow evaporates? What's that called again?
Sublimation?
Sublimation. Thank you. We don't get as much sublimation with calm cold winters. So really, I think the bigger impact will be how windy the watersheds are. But yeah, Alex and John, do you want to add to that?
I think that's absolutely right. For the winter, I would add, I was just reading one of the State University Water Institute's reports on warming in the Colorado River Basin, and the researchers' conclusion was it can reduce, the higher temperatures can have an impact of 30+% on stream flow. So they can reduce stream flow by 30+%. So warm temperatures can have a huge impact on yield and water availability.
The only thing I think I would add to any of that is just anecdotally from observation. I think in the shoulder months, beginning of the season like we're in now, if it's cold and it stays cold, whatever snow we're getting is going to stay better than if it like we get back into the 60s and 70s again, especially at the lower elevations in the mountains. And then again in the spring, if it stays colder longer into March and April up high, then that snow will hang on a little bit better. But we have warm periods in those shoulder months, then that's going to affect that snowpack. So if it's going to be colder, I think that may be a good sign.
Interesting. All right. Appreciate the answer.
Thank you. Just a real quick question about cloud seeding. Is that going to be undertaken with more effort this year in the mountains with Aurora's participation?
Yes, we are participating in cloud seeding, not necessarily more. We've been participating in cloud seeding for quite a few years, and we're planning to continue to participate. There is a little bit of a hiccup this year where Colorado Springs, who has historically participated, is saying they might not participate. I think Vail Resorts pulled out of their participation. So we think it's still going to move forward, but there's less participation now, ironically, than there has been in the past, even though Aurora has remained supportive.
Okay, thank you. With no further questions, we'll move on to item 2C from Joanne Giddings, who is probably watching closely if council would approve a rate increase, but we're going to get a quarterly financial report here. Joanne?
Hey, Joanne is not available right now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, this is Fernando Aranda. Sorry. Yeah, Joanne is not available today. She's in a conference. And, well, in general, the financials are good. Revenues are slightly higher than planned, and compared to last year, only like 0.5% higher. Expenses are relatively lower because mainly of vacancies and sometimes issues with the capital projects and getting all the things going have been an issue after the pandemic. But one of the revenue items that haven't increased as much as we plan is connection fees. Although we had 2 years of record growth, we are relatively growing at a good pace, but not at the levels of the last 2 years for sure. So connection fees revenues have been slightly lower than we planned or compared to last year. In terms of cash, we've been spending in a capital projects. Mainly the SEAM project has been an important one throughout the year. And we spent about $20 million in water rights around July, and that reduced some of our cash balances. But in general, the finances are in good shape, and we're going to end up the year in a good place, and we're going to keep doing projects.
Thank you. Any questions regarding our financial report?
I don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, just want to touch base with Council Member Allison Coombs to check on her connection. Would you like us to wait a moment, Council Member Coombs, or looks like you're connected?
I think I'm good now. So I should be able to go ahead and speak.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much for having me today, y'all. I am unfortunately having to join from my phone because my laptop is not connecting at City Hall. But I just wanted to reach out and talk to you all about the Water Education Colorado Water Fluency Program, which I was able to complete over the summer. It was a May through August, once per month, all day meeting with one meeting in Gunnison. So each year they do a different basin. And so yes, this year the focus was the Gunnison River Basin. They do still cover information about all of the basins, but they kind of have an area of focus, and that's where you do a site visit. I unfortunately had to watch the site visit virtually because I had COVID at the time when we were meeting in Gunnison. But it was a really helpful and enlightening program because it, again, if you then participate, which you can do more than once, you can get that in-depth deep dive about different basins within Colorado as well. But they really covered water resources, hydrology, as well as a number of kind of current and upcoming political issues, which obviously the Colorado River is a significant part of that at this time. We got the information that we were going to be expected to either get a plan together or have one made for us during the course of the class this year. And so that made the Colorado River discussion even more salient at that point. So I think two of the big issues that we really heard about and that were very significant were the impact of tribal water rights on the Colorado River Compact. Sorry. And so there, the Southern Ute, or Mountain Ute, apologies, have about 15,000 acre feet of water rights that they are not currently utilizing and diverting due to lack of infrastructure that would, or that are as a result flowing downstream currently to the lower basin users. And so that's an additional resource that the lower basin users are oversubscribing, is those rights that would otherwise be tribal water rights. And the important issue there is that our prior appropriation doctrine, that the tribal water rights are actually outside of that. So the seniority of water rights that we operate under, the tribal water rights are essentially treated as more senior even than the most senior water rights under prior appropriation. So should those folks be able to appropriate the water that they're entitled to, they would be allowed to do so, and it would then impact everyone else on the river. Now, I think, sorry, one moment. I thought I was going to have time to get home instead of to City Hall after the Visit Aurora annual meeting.
Water expert in the making.
But so the other issue, which we ended up hearing about at our kind of day-long water workshop for the city, is that although that's true, it really does impact the lower basin users more, because we in the upper basin, if we were to be sued on the grounds that we were somehow not providing the return flows that were obligated, that would be a very hard case for the lower basin to make, because we consistently in the upper basin are not taking the amount of water that we are entitled to take under the compact. So that's good news for us, but still bad news for the river overall, that essentially not only are we as oversubscribed as we thought, but in terms of the rights that tribes have, we're actually another 15,000 acre feet at least oversubscribed on the river for other users. So I think that's a really critical issue that I was not aware of prior to taking the course. And then the other thing that was really enlightening was just hearing from the agricultural users in the Gunnison Basin. I think in our water workshop, we kind of had some discussion and some questions and conversations of, well, what exactly is going on if most of the water is going to agriculture, not to municipal uses? Are we really the ones that need to be focusing on conservation? And so there were many presentations about both the Colorado Water Conservation Board as well as the different regional conservation entities that the agricultural users are a part of, and the work that they're doing to manage demand from agricultural users to ensure that they are not oversubscribing within their own ditch companies and other entities that represent them, but also that they're really being as efficient as possible in the way that they are operating agriculturally. And so I think it's important to know that they are doing the work, that they're not just saying, oh, well, why are you using the water and we're not going to do our part? They really are focused on also doing their part. And I think that maintaining those relationships with the folks that we may have shares in their ditch company that are agricultural users, as well as folks who are just part of this larger water ecosystem, is really important. And I think being on this committee, you all have probably learned quite a bit about the relationship that we have with the folks in Rocky Ford and the agricultural users there, and how important it is, and what a good job our staff also do in maintaining those relationships and making sure that the actions that we're taking aren't creating more discord, because I think we're all in this together, and we need to see ourselves as municipal users as still on the same team as the agricultural users in how we all can conserve. And so I think those were the two big highlights that don't tend to be covered in the work that we already do as municipalities from the course. But I really, really strongly encourage folks to participate, because there is a lot of other just nuts and bolts about things like watershed management and work with the Forest Service, which we heard about a little bit in our meeting on Monday, as far as the kind of Forest Service based watershed management. So I think that's another area that we don't tend to hear as much about as a city. And it's a deeper dive into even all the things that we do tend to work with, like just water resources and water rights and water law. It really takes into a deep dive, not only the guides that Marshall helpfully has given us, the Water Education Colorado guides, but also some additional ones that are not part of what we review in our orientation on water with Marshall. And then they also provide a subscription to this wonderful Colorado Headwaters magazine. I don't know if you see that, but that really goes over a lot of, again, the more current issues that we see in water in Colorado. And in general, building that relationship with Water Education Colorado, who not only works with civic leaders like us, but also members of our community, to make sure that we all understand the issues that we face and our part in them. So It was a highly valuable experience that I highly encourage all municipal leaders, especially in Aurora with our huge role in water within the state, to participate in.
Great. Thank you for participating in the workshop. Questions for Councilmember Coombs from anyone?
Just kind of a follow-up to that last point, and maybe I missed it if you said, was this put on by like the state, or how did you, because I'd like to maybe do it in the future. How did you find out about it?
So Water Education Colorado is an organization that is funded by the state to provide this education. I actually was told about it by some environmental folks, environmental advocates that I know. And so that's how I found out about it originally. But it's the website is wateredco.org. That you can go to their site, and they also have a water congress and a lot of other, again, really helpful events, but also all of those water guides that we get from Marshall, as well as all the ones that they cover in the course, are available as PDFs, which I think is a great resource for us and also for the community, because it's a free resource for anyone interested in getting that information. But you can also find out about their other programming that they provide on the website, including.
Really interesting. Thanks for the presentation.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Coombs. Any questions from staff?
Well, a couple things, I guess, just so everybody's aware. Aurora Water does support water education, the Water Education Foundation. So we work with them on a number of things. I guess the other question I might have, we try to, well, we put on a water tour every year, right? And try to provide information to council, and obviously in water, there's a ton of information out there and a ton of details. So I would by no means discourage anybody from going through the course that Allison did. I think there's a ton of value there. I guess one question I would have, though, for council is maybe what we would love to be able to provide whatever detail and information you all are most interested in, and format or customize our water tour to make sure we provide the most relevant information, the information if you feel you're not getting or you could use more information about anything. So if you have questions or topics, please shoot those over to me, and we'll make sure we get those integrated into the water tour as well. Or we can also do other things with getting information or details or doing tours or anything council's interested in. So the water education thing is definitely good. It's a little broader perspective, which has a ton of value, as Allison just noted. What we could do internally is provide a little more connection to specifically the Aurora related infrastructure, water rights topics, all of that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, and Marshall, if you want, maybe we could sit down and look over kind of all the materials that they did provide and talk about what sorts of things might be helpful for council on that deeper dive. I will say that because of all the workshops that Aurora Water has put on, there were some sessions that I felt exceptionally well prepared for, and that during them I was kind of like, oh, I actually already know all this stuff. So there were points where I did already have the information because of the information that we get from Aurora Water, but definitely there were some topics that maybe aren't, again, is directly relevant to our day-to-day work, but that are still helpful to understand.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah. So I'd love to sit down. We could go through kind of the topics, the agenda, what they provided, what you felt was of most value, and what we can add to some of our curriculums or workshops here. That'd be fantastic. So I'll follow up on that.
Great.
Anyone else have a question for Allison or a comment regarding the workshop? All right, well, Allison, thanks for spending time with us and filling us in. And I know you've had a lot of great experience in water in various ways. You were even on the Cherry Creek Basin Water Quality Authority, by which you've left that to me now. And those guys over there, they really geek out on water issues. And as you would say, Allison, it's a dense topic at times, right?
Yes,
Thank
well, I
you.
really appreciate you taking that on because the schedule just wasn't working for me, and I'm glad that it's informational to you as well. And yeah, always, in addition, I am always happy to talk with other council members and answer any questions you may have for me on this workshop, other opportunities I've had to learn about and work on water. And I certainly appreciate all of you for serving on this committee. I know it's a lot of time commitment and information. So thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you, Councilmember Coombs, for
Thank
your
you.
time and willingness. Have a great
And I'll
day.
follow up.
Yep. Wonderful. Wonderful. Enjoy your day. Moving on to item number 4, pros water conservation, past, present, and future. Brooke Bell.
Good morning. Casey, are you able to put the presentation up and run it for me?
Sorry. Greg has given you
Well,
permission to share.
I had the presentation. If you'd rather I run it, would you rather run it, Brooke, or do you want me to run it?
If you would run it, Greg, that would be great.
Okay, give me 1 second. I didn't
We'll
have it.
see how,
Okay,
I can keep, if I stay connected, so,
okay. Almost there.
thank you. Good morning, council. My name for the record is Brooke Bell. I'm the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. And I'll be speaking about pros water conservation. During this presentation, I'll share a roadmap of where pros department has focused conservation efforts over the years and where the department is currently moving towards. It really is an evolving plan. We work very closely with Aurora Water on all water issues and all conservation efforts. And so I'll speak to that as well. Greg, if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. There's a lot of material on this slide. Aurora Water and the pros department have had a collaborative history of data-driven decision-making to support water conservation efforts. Water allocation amounts are established on pros properties based on climate data and vegetation types. The departments actively collect and record property-specific water usage data and can assess if the water use is appropriate for the vegetation type and the temperatures. Periodic interdepartment reviews further support pros staff that are in the parks and working with irrigation systems daily. Water adjustments and repairs are informed by data collected and review. So that's where we've been in the partnership for several years. We also have places where we have reuse water. And again, the key point here is we meet often. And we are data driven. We meet often with Aurora Water, and we are data driven in our water usage. Over the last 4 years, from 2019 through 2022, the pros operations and maintenance division focused on turf to native grass conversion projects, replacing over 38 acres of aesthetic Kentucky bluegrass. The team is replacing irrigation control systems to improve data acquisition and efficient water use. Earlier this year, City Council approved the replacement of Kentucky bluegrass in the outfield of a Highline Park ball field with a new cool weather hardened Bermuda grass that is advertised to use nearly 2/3 less water. I'll speak to that later in the presentation. In addition, through the support of our citizens, the pros department identifies and implements opportunities to further reduce our water footprint during park renovation and new park construction projects, as was demonstrated in the last couple of years at Tollgate Crossing Park, and most recently with the Canterbury Park renovation project completed this summer. Tollgate Crossing Park was constructed without the use of Kentucky bluegrass and with significant native grass areas established. And then Canterbury Park when it was renovated, had significant native grass areas established that were originally Kentucky bluegrass. In 2023 and beyond, PRO's staff will continue to build on lessons already learned. Kentucky bluegrass lawns of the Aurora fire stations will be converted to xeric and Firewise designs. This project will eliminate about 3 acres of Kentucky bluegrass. The PRO's 5-year capital plan includes over $8 million for additional turf conversion projects and efforts that also include irrigation systems and controller replacements. The department's short-term goal is to replace 30% of the aesthetic turf in the city owned and maintained properties, parks properties within the next 5 years. Greg, would you like to move to the next slide, please? You're all familiar with these 2 initiatives. These have driven the work that we're doing over the next 5 years. We are aligned with these initiatives with regard to our budget and our plans. That's Greg, we won't have to go over these if you want to go to the next slide. These were mainly for the public. Thank you. This is the single largest water consumer for Aurora Water. To put it in perspective, the PRO's usage is approximately 4% of the total water consumed, as shown on the blue pie chart to the left. The green pie chart shows nearly a 50-50 split between irrigated active turf areas, the programmed areas, and the aesthetic turf areas. We have approximately 800 acres of irrigated turf. Total park department irrigation turf, I've already said that 800 acres. These numbers do not include the golf courses, and I'll speak to that at the end of the presentation. This first presentation really doesn't address golf courses. The PRO's commitment to eliminate 30% of the aesthetic turf equates to 130 acres, which uses approximately 196 acre feet of water, and is equivalent to the use of 600 households. PRO's conservation efforts will focus on passive or the aesthetic turf areas not conducive to active program recreation areas. Active and programmed areas that we want to preserve are listed on the slide in the left-hand corner. These are the sports fields, the informal gathering areas, the reflective areas, and active recreation areas. The next 2 slides will demonstrate the mapping efforts undertaken to classify the acreage types. The maps are for Aurora Sports Park and are examples only. The maps do not reflect specific plans or priorities to convert aesthetic turf into these parks. These are just examples. The PRO's department turf conversion projects in the last several years have focused on entrance areas to the parks along trails, highways with relatively little notice from the public. We know as we move into the parks, there will be more public interest and will require a robust public engagement, public information campaign. This slide of Aurora Park, the map shows the orange areas as being native grasses and the green areas as program field areas and adjacent gathering areas where families often sit to watch the events or sit in between events. There's approximately 108 acres of irrigated turf in the park. 85 acres is programmed or social gathering areas. And the 23 acres shown in yellow are identified as aesthetic turf, which would be the opportunities for conversion. The next slide, please. And here's another example of a well-known park. This is Utah Park. Again, this is not a specific plan. It's an opportunity. There are 28 acres of total irrigated turf. 19 of it is active and 9 is aesthetic. And you can see that in the yellow. It's primarily around the borders along the streets where that turf could be converted, and also some central areas around some of the different features in the courts. Greg, if you, thank you. Here's an example. These are examples of native grass conversions that were undertaken this year. Sand Creek Greenway was one, and you'll see the before picture. You see what it looks like in between, and then the native grass product. And then Bicentennial Park is below, again, the before, midsummer, and then how it looks this fall. One of the key points here is with native conversions, the first year is relatively easy. The second and third year are manpower intensive to really develop a beautiful stand of native grasses. It's a lot of handwork with regard to weeding and taking care of the grass. It's very important that we don't mow it. We often get requests to mow the native stands because the citizens want it to look like the Kentucky bluegrass turf. And so that will be part of the education process as well, to let citizens know that there's this transition period before it'll look beautiful. We also maintain irrigation to the trees in these areas. The trees are important. They cannot thrive without the irrigation, and I'll speak to trees a little bit later. Great, thank you. You can move to the next slide. Bermuda grass. We have this year, PRO's staff installed two Tahoma Bermuda grass pilot projects. This one is located at the Highline Canal ballpark. It was laid in with sod, and you can see the pictures. It really has done very well. It has been reported that it uses less water. That does need to be verified. So there needs to be work around how much water is really used by the Bermuda grass. Like I said, it's advertised at 2/3. We need to confirm that through data, and we're working on that. It also has a different type of root system where it grows and spreads out, much like a network instead of down. And so the maintenance for Bermuda grass often requires more edging, but less mowing, where you can mow every other week because it doesn't grow as high. So that's promising. The edging is more manpower intensive. The product does go dormant early, and it is brown when it goes dormant, and it also will most likely green up much later in the spring than Kentucky bluegrass. And then the next step is, again, is to evaluate how it overwinters in our Colorado climate. This is another slide of the Bermuda grass. This was a different method where the staff took the sod pieces and ran it through machinery that tore it up into little chunks, and then laid it out in the furrows. And then you can see how well it's done. It is a more economic process for installing the product. There are only 2 licensed growers for the Tahoma Bermuda grass, and this allowed us to cover a lot larger space than with the sod installation. Thank you, Greg. I don't have a slide of it, but before I move on to Xeric, staff are also experimenting with other vegetation. For example, on the medians, there is a small median project where they're experimenting with clover. And is there an opportunity for clover instead of a native grass or again, the Kentucky bluegrass? On this slide, this is the design of the recently installed Aurora Municipal Courthouse Xeric plants, and we'll have a demonstration garden over by the courthouse. We're still waiting on more plants that will go in the spring. There is not an irrigation system to these beds, and so to establish the plants and for periodic water needs, there will be a small utility vehicle that will run up and down that sidewalk and water them. But it should be quite nice and use a small amount of water. Greg? With regard to trees, the number one request that I get when we are talking to citizens about park design is about trees and shade. So trees continue to be very important to us. They do, as I said earlier, require irrigation. They are beneficial to the environment. They provide shade, they prevent evaporation. The root systems draw water up to the surface, and they maintain a canopy that assists with, will assist over a long-term drought. Thank you. Greg? So our challenges and opportunities and where we go from here. As I said earlier, we do need public engagement, and we would want to have a strong public campaign to support our efforts and to educate citizens on the value and then what these properties look like as they're transitioning and what they would look like in the future, and to assure them that the areas that they use still will be nice, usable, and a place to go when they want to be in the parks and when they're viewing sporting events. The challenge for the department and the city is balancing those attractive, sustainable, and affordable designs. Their designs are quite costly with the hardscapes and the rocks and the plants. Native grasses are much less expensive. However, they do often leave the impression of weeds. We often hear, we don't like the look because we don't irrigate them. They turn brown during the drier months of the summer. And we don't like the look because they look like weeds. We do need to get over that because they are going to be a tool in our toolbox. And then if we're successful with Bermuda grass or other grass types, they will fit in this as well, but they are also very expensive. They're kind of in the middle of the road. And so it'll take some more experimenting on how we can install them and be successful. We want to protect the tree canopy, as I said earlier. Our challenges continue to be staffing and contract availability. We have great people and we're focused on this, and our ability to meet the 30% commitment will be predicated on our ability to have the staff and the contractors that can help us. I think we're going to turn the corner. I've got to believe we're going to turn the corner on this in this coming year with regard to staffing. Funding resources. We can use the Conservation Trust Fund. We can use Adams County and the Open Space Tax funds. We can get grants from these entities associated with these projects. Where it becomes more challenging for us, and these projects in parks, where it becomes more challenging for us is that these funds, that the Conservation Trust Fund and the Open Space Fund, are not eligible for use on our municipal facilities, our curbside landscapes, or our medians. And so those are I think, high value areas to convert because the amount of water they use. And I think there'll be less, because of the amount of water they use, but it will require some additional work to find the grant money or the financial support to convert the medians and the curbsides. And then the long-term impact on park operations, I suspect it will change. Again, native grasses require a lot of effort, but then we're seeing interesting things with the Bermuda grass that might change the way we do things. And the Bermuda grass would take on a different type of mower, which means, more investment in different kinds of mechanical equipment. So. Greg, was that the last slide?
Yes, that is the last slide, yes.
Okay, so I have a couple other comments. Again, with regard to the golf courses. On average, a golf course in the Southwest uses somewhere around 300 to 500 acre-feet of water annually. The City of Aurora golf courses compare extraordinarily well and average about 200 acre-feet of water annually. The staff at these courses have worked hard over the years to reduce their water footprint, and historically they try to water 20% below their water allocations. So when required, they're willing to have further conversations about what they can do. I would prefer to move slowly with the golf courses. It is an enterprise fund and we're competing with other golf courses in the area. And they are already doing significant and have done significant efforts to reduce their water footprint. And so we'll watch what's happening with other courses, and our staff will continue to reduce their water usage. With regard to specific plans, for 2023, we do have a number of locations that we are evaluating right now. So we do have a list of projects, and both on the park renovation side, which we will have an opportunity through park renovations to remove Bermuda grass and to improve our irrigation systems and our points of control. And we also have a number of projects identified for turf conversion that are not related to overall renovation projects. We're still working on that with plans that go beyond 2023. It will be an evolving process. Are there any other questions? Any questions?
Councilmember Gardner, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. Thanks, Brooke, for the presentation. The first one is on native grasses, and if you answered this already, I missed it. When those are installed, native grasses are installed and/or after installation, just for ongoing purposes, does that require any water, or is it just kind of normal precipitation and that's all that's needed?
No, and I'm going to ask John if he would unmute. My understanding and what I remember is that we do water them for a time. John, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we do water them for a time. Usually, the amount of we want the natives to get established. So usually, it's the 2 to 3 year period with irrigation to help us establish that native, get a strong stand, so compete against weeds and other things that are coming up. So, and then after that, we can either choose to do a reduced water schedule for the natives, so it won't turn as brown quickly, or we would have the option to shut it off if we wanted to.
Gotcha. Okay. And then my next question is on golf courses. So you're probably aware in a lot of places, Florida and other warm weather climates, they have Bermuda grass on golf courses already. Would Colorado, would that be even an option here? Or does our weather get so cold in the winter that what would that look like, I guess?
So I think what we need to do is, again, the type of grass we're experimenting with right now is the Tahoma Bermuda grass is a cold weather hardened. So it has been designed to withstand the cooler temperatures and overwinter well. We just haven't got the experience on that. So I would like to have a few years of experience with that grass before we would make a decision to move that into a golf course.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if Greg or others have experience with other Bermudas or other grass types that would be suitable in the Colorado weather.
Yeah, and I have experience with a lot of experience with turf grass on golf courses, but it's primarily from the warmer climates, Arizona.
Yeah.
And they can do fine down there. I'm extremely hopeful for this new Bermuda variant that Brooke and John, the pros folks, have installed and found. I think, well, I hope, and it's promising. I hope that proves to be a great solution for things like our golf courses. But I agree with Brooke. We don't have a lot of history in the Colorado climate. The turf grasses I'm familiar with, even the variations of Bermuda, really struggle in the extreme cold. And so they don't come back as readily and they stay dormant way too long if they do ever recover. So the new variation or variant, again, hopefully in a couple of years, we're we're having that conversation, Curtis, and we can choose what Brooke and I frankly talked about, even though I'm not sure we're there yet, was maybe we go to a driving range and install it at a driving range.
Yeah.
After getting a year or so of success in some of the current applications, we could start at a driving range, and that'd give us a really good indication of how it might do in a golf application without compromising the integrity or the revenues associated with a full golf course.
Interesting. Okay.
Just to add,
go
could I
ahead.
add another point, council member? And just for everybody that the Tahoma that we sodded this year went dormant October 17th.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah, it's interesting. I've mentioned before on these meetings that I'm a golf course architecture nerd, and one of the podcasts that I listen to, they regularly have an agronomy person on, and one of the things that has kind of transitioned in golf course design and aesthetics over the years. So for a long time, people wanted like lush emerald green golf courses, and with some of the newer designs and also older design, like pre 1990 design courses, link style courses like Murphy Creek, having like lush green grass is not as important in kind of the architectural and aesthetic considerations. So I'm curious to see what we find out about that. And as a pretty avid golfer, playing on a Bermuda style grass is different, not better, not worse. But if it's something that we could apply here to ensure, long-term viability of our golf courses without, and also, saving water, I think that would be a great thing. So just, I'm curious to see where that conversation goes. And so appreciate that. So my comments two comments. One is recently, a little bit ago, returned from Las Vegas, and it kind of goes along with something Brooke mentioned, where people are just going to have to get used to, rocks and some other things that traditionally were maybe associated with weeds or what, because, when you go to Las Vegas, especially outside of the tourist areas, that's really all you see. You don't see a lot of grass or as much grass as you see here. You don't even see a lot of xeric or bushes or anything like that. It's a lot of rocks. And, in places like that, that's just kind of what they're used to. And so I think it's going to be a transition period for folks here in Colorado and the metro area, and specifically Aurora, to get used to that. But it's kind of the way of life in some other places that have been drier for longer than we have. And so I agree with what Brooke said. It's going to take a mind shift a little bit. And then my other comment is just glad to see kind of the progress over the last several years, but the planned progress even more so going into the future by pros. That was one of the things I brought up when we had discussions in this committee and on council for the water conservation ordinance, was making sure that we as the city, not just pros but everyone, are putting our money where our mouth is in terms of, if we're going to encourage our residents to transition away from grass, we should do the same thing where we can. And so certainly glad to see that we are making those investments. And it's going to cost a lot of money in the short term, but hopefully in the long term we can realize some savings from not watering, but even more so, help our water supply out some. So just appreciate the effort on this, Brooke, and thanks for the presentation.
You're very welcome. I'd also like to acknowledge several people worked on this. This required a strong collaborative effort that has existed with Aurora Water, but we had Tim York, Adam Waters, Greg Baker, and then from pros, John Weslowski, John Gebhardt, Nicole Ankeny. There are a lot of people that put a lot of time and effort into this particular presentation, but also in all the work that goes around that's actually happening out there.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. I got a couple quick questions maybe for John Weslowski. In the experimental Bermuda area, have you ever been tempted to put it in a triangle? Bad joke. Can I get a rim shot there?
Thump.
That was funny.
And then With respect to Tree City USA, what is the criteria or requirement to maintain that honor?
I'll probably be able to answer 3 or 4. There's 4 criteria. And so you got to have a tree ordinance. You have to celebrate Arbor Day. You have to have a board or commission that supports tree planting, and that's the council. And you have to spend so much per capita, which I think it's like it's a low number to qualify for Tree City USA. Those are the 4 items to qualify.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations for maintaining that. And thank you again to pros for your work in the conservation and your collaborative efforts with water. Moving on to number 5, if there's no other comments or questions. The intergovernmental agreement with the city and county of Denver regarding sewer discharge connection with Sundberg.
Good morning, Council. My name is Suvin Urenda, and I'm the Planning Services Manager. Greg, do you have I have one slide to share with you with regards to this IGA. So, Greg, if you could put up that slide for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Basically, what this is it's an IGA between the city and the city and county of Denver for Denver to actually lease some capacity in an interceptor that we currently own. And this sewer interceptor is called segment 1E. And it's really located in the north, I'd say, northwestern kind of portion of the city. Just, it serves the area around Gaylord, just for reference. Now, segment 1E was built in 2018 by Aurora. Now, in this whole area, there's been a lot of collaboration between Aurora, City and County of Denver, and Metro in how we can best handle and manage all the wastewater flows that are generated in this area. And the reason for that is because it's kind of way out there, and then there's significant infrastructure costs in whichever options we picked. So at that time, when we're building segment 1E, our choice was, Aurora's choice was to basically expand the High Point lift station and then pump all that sewage back to around 56th. And that was a significant cost. So in collaboration with Denver at the time, we said, hey, how about we build an interceptor that connects to the Gateway lift station, and Denver had capacity in the Gateway lift station in the interim, and then we would use that capacity until Metro came and built the regional interceptor, which is called the Second Creek Interceptor, which would connect to Gateway. So we would reduce the amount of throwaway cost and actually reduce the amount of infrastructure cost from Aurora's perspective by us building segment 1E. Now, when we designed and built segment 1E, we incorporated some areas of Denver that would be tributary to that segment 1E. So in the interim, Aurora is leasing capacity in Denver's Gateway lift station so that they can transmit the flows pump the flows on our behalf. What this IGA is doing is that a customer in Denver's service area is requesting to connect to our segment 1E. And in our design, like I've mentioned it before previously, is that we accommodated those flows from that Denver area. So 2 things are going to happen in the future. Once the SDI is complete, right? Once Metro finishes construction of the SDI, the Gateway lift station will be decommissioned. And then the other thing that's going to happen is that segment Metro is going to take over ownership of segment 1E. So we will no longer be responsible for operation and maintenance of segment 1E. It becomes a Metro interceptor. So that was another win-win in this whole situation. So the question we have before us right now is Denver would like their customer to connect to segment 1E, and we have capacity for that connection. Right now, I think it's an average of 0.5 MGD, million gallons per day, with a peak of 1 million gallons per day. And the term for this IGA is 3 years, which is basically accommodating when the SDI is going to be complete, or whenever Metro comes to take it over, whichever one of those two dates comes sooner is the term for this IGA. So the question that I have before you is, do you approve taking this for further discussion at study session? And if you have any other questions for me?
Councilmember Gardner?
I don't have any questions. I'm okay moving it forward to study session.
I am as well. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 6, an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Aurora, BLM, for a memorandum of understanding for the purpose of preparing an environmental impact statement for the Wild Forest Reservation project. Alex.
Yes, good morning. So we're very excited. This will be a big step forward in starting that NEPA process. Council members may recollect the cost recovery agreement that we put through the council process several months ago. That defines how much we think this process is going to cost and was approximately $230,000. This agreement really gets into the nuts and bolts about how the NEPA process will work. It outlines who, between the BLM and City of Aurora, the Aurora Water Department, who is responsible for what aspect of that very complicated process. So it lays out roles and responsibilities for both entities. It talks about the third-party contractor. Aurora gets to hire that contractor, but they report to the BLM to ensure objectivity and that the project proponent is not influencing the EIS information. This agreement lays out the public scoping meetings, how those will work, who will set them up. It lays out how we and when we will communicate on these issues, who's going to develop what technical information, how that information will be shared, and lays out who pays for what, which is really mostly Aurora paying for everything, but not everything, but most of it. So we're excited that this agreement here is here and we've gotten to this point. We are shooting, and this is a little ambitious, but we're shooting for a notice of intent to be published in the spring of 2023. And this document is a key piece to getting this process underway. It is, because of some timing issues that we had with the BLM, it is currently in draft form. We expect it to look very much like this. There may be some dates filled in, and we expect it to be finalized by the time it gets to study. So with that, I will stop and see if there's any questions or any other information you would like.
Thank you. Councilmember Gardner?
No questions. Okay with moving forward.
Myself as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Item number 7, Greg Baker for a Rural Water Management Plan overview.
Hi, thank you. I know we presented in April on both our drought action team and our water management plan, but I want to come back with kind of more in-depth discussion water management plan. As John Murphy mentioned in the beginning, we're not happy with where our reservoir levels are. And just so you're aware of where they're at right now, we are at 90,803 acre feet in our reservoirs. That's 58% of capacity. At our low point last winter, basically, that was in April, we were at 91,000. So already we're well below where we were at our low point last year, and we have the entire winter to weather through here. We're projecting our reservoirs could possibly be at 49% by the time runoff begins, which is definitely a worrisome number. So I wanted you to be aware of what we traditionally do for demand management if we enter drought stage the next drought stage. So the water management plan is obviously a framework. It gives us a formal document to help us preserve our water supply. There's a council policy that states we shall have 3 years of supply and storage. That's our goal. We're obviously well below that, and we could be about 50%, which would be about less than a year and a half supply, which is now where we want to be. So the water management plan becomes that tool for water supply management through demand management. Reminder that the water management plan is actually authorized through city ordinance. It gives us the ability to enforce and issue penalties through our water billing system for violation of water waste ordinances as well as water management plan programs. When you talk about a drought stage, in water management plan refers to them as a water availability stage because it's not always put in place because of drought, could be because of a infrastructure emergency. But a water availability stage is declared by council. We do it through a resolution. It can also be declared by the city manager, so long as in the case of emergency, but it would need to be affirmed by council at its next meeting. But we traditionally go through council on this. So water availability stages or drought stages, they limit outdoor water use only. That's really we have a challenge that we cannot really restrict indoor water use through traditional methods. So what this would do is this would put day-a-week restrictions, 2-day-a-week restriction. Right now, our permanent standard is 3-day-a-week, but you get to pick your day. If we go into the next stage, it would be 2-day-a-week, and we would tell you which day based upon the address. So enforcement becomes a little easier for us on that side. Enforceability for those day-a-week restrictions is again through penalties on the water bill. It is a civil penalty. And then the stages 1 through 3 in the plan actually also implement drought surcharges, which are included in the rate ordinance. We'll talk a little bit about that because there's an education component that's going to be very critical for our customer base on that. So just a reminder, since we had the council policy of 3 years supply and storage, we have calculated our triggers for these stages based upon the months of availability. This is actually based upon a formula, and we're refining that formula even as we speak with an update of our integrated water master plan. But the calculation is annualized. It is based upon storage, based upon Prairie Water's capacity, and other factors that can enhance our supply. If we can lease additional water and bring in substantial amounts of water, it impacts our ability to provide supply. So we delineate the stages by anything 30 months or greater meets that council goal of 3-year supply. So that would put us in normal 3-day-a-week restrictions. You get to pick your day. Between 30 and 25 months of supply, we would go into stage 1, which we would look for a demand reduction of 20% in outdoor use. That would effectively be, we talked about 50% of our water traditionally is used for outdoor use. That would increase our water supply by 10% because we're not using it. Stage 3, which is 24 to 13 months, would result in a 1 day per week watering restriction. That's basically maintenance mode for most landscapes. That would result in a 50% reduction in outdoor use or 25% increase in our supply. And then the emergency conditions, as I stated before, I hope we never get there by drought. This is mostly for anything operational, a major loss of infrastructure. We would, in essence, ban all outdoor use. So again, we ran through several of these stages already. The one thing I do want to mention to you is that we have a water variance program for large properties that can keep a large property out of the fixed day restrictions because they get a variance allocation that's separate from their billing allocation. Conservation calculates how much water a large property would need, and traditionally large properties are anything 20,000 square feet or larger of landscape. We calculate the water that they would need to maintain their property within these restrictions. So for normal, it would be we're trying to keep a healthy landscape. So that's effectively what you need based upon our calculations. We would reduce that that allocation by 20% for stage 1 and 50% by stage 2. This is an application, a voluntary program, it's an application process. And if anybody exceeds their allocation, what happens is they end up having to go down to day-a-week restrictions. And most of these properties are too large to effectively water on a day-a-week restriction. So this is a good carrot approach. It helps give tools to larger properties, especially HOAs and metro districts. I do kind of want to highlight a little bit about how the programmatic elements of these break out, and they're broken out by customer class, residential versus multifamily, commercial versus irrigation. So we'll start with the residential first. As I mentioned, it's day-a-week restriction. Surcharge comes into effect only in starting in stage 1. And we'll talk a little bit how that affects the tier structure. That's where the residential structure is different from the commercial, multifamily and irrigation rate structures. We would notify everybody when their 2 days a week are based upon the last digit of their address. And then we'll have days reserved for larger properties, for example. Question that always come up is about annuals. Can people water their annuals? Yes, they can, because actually hand watering of annuals, even automatic watering of annuals and gardens, is always substantially less than turf. So this will be well communicated to the customers through mailings. We'll talk a little bit about communication at the end. It is a pretty robust plan that we've had in place for years, and we're refining it right now. The commercial, and this also encompasses the multifamily. Even though they're separate class, they have the same rules in place. So commercial, multifamily, and irrigation accounts do have billing allocations. They essentially paid for that capacity in the system. So what the variance program gives part of that tool for trying to get them to reduce that water use. The surcharges, however, are probably a stronger tool in this case. As is outreach, obviously, but the surcharge becomes kind of that incentivization to reduce. And again, when we talk about the surcharges, we can get a little more detail on that. We do allow for new landscape establishment in drought stage 1. We do not permit it in drought stage 2. The establishment period of a new landscape is its highest water use. If they're doing turf, it's typically a 20-day establishment period. If it's seed, it can be up to a 45 to 60-day establishment period. So we were cognizant of development's needs and homeowners' needs at this point, so we do permit that. When we talk about municipal use, Brooke went in a great deal to talk about how PROS deals with water. They have their own water management plan. They worked with us. They developed with us. And that sees these same reductions, but it gives them greater flexibility, because we're asking people to maybe set aside their landscaping or diminish the water in their landscaping. We want to make sure that they have a public area they can still use. This gives pros a great deal of flexibility while still meeting those same reduction goals. Again, the same thing as far as establishment. We would obviously discourage this establishment of new turf if possible, but as Brooke mentioned, we have some pilot projects going on that frankly would benefit us long term, so they'd probably definitely be accommodated at that point. And then when it comes to the kind of the et al category, the other uses, car washes are one that's kind of interesting. We used to have a program where we actually certified car wash, and they had a flag that we're a certified car wash. But since the last major drought in 2002, 2003, most commercial car washes that have automatic bays, once you drive through the bays, they're not automatic wash your car, they have all included reuse systems, and most of them are using either 40 or 60% reuse systems. So they're already reusing their water, already incredibly efficient. So we are considering those to be a certified car wash, and we'll communicate with the car wash management on ways they can promote that. The one that does stand out here is the spray or the wand bays, where you drive in, you get the wand, and you wash the car yourself. Those traditionally do not use recycled water because there's a lot more sand and gravel that goes into that. So those would not be considered a certified car wash, but in stage one, they simply would need to incorporate best management practices. We'll work with them on how to do that. Mostly that's through communication, use water wisely. We'll provide them with posters and things like that. It's in stage two where the non-certified would not be permitted to operate. But again, that's actually a fairly small percentage of car washes. If you look around your neighborhood and see what car washes are available on a commercial basis, that actually is a pretty small percentage. Power washing, obviously, there are reasons that you do want to power wash. So in stage two, we permit it for health and safety considerations. Community gardens, as I mentioned, gardening is actually very water efficient. They tend to use less than 50% less water. And the folks who are involved in community gardens are quite often our water stewards. Our conservation department already works with the community gardens on maintaining their gardens. They have a users group that so it's a great communications tool for us. So they're able to still hand water or use our drip irrigation system even through stage two because there's such low water use. And obviously construction use, we have to meet requirements of other parts of code which require construction water for soil compaction and air quality concerns. So in stage one, it's still permitted with no wasting of water, and that should go without saying. And so the construction water use is the highest cost water, costs over $10 per 1,000 gallons. So that's a financial incentive already in place for them not to waste water. In stage two, we'd have to look at each project and see, do we have the water to support it, and is it beneficial, or can this be postponed? So let's talk a little bit about drought surcharges, because we've been fortunate not to have to put drought surcharges in place in a long time. There was not really a drought surcharge structure, but there was an equivalent of it in 2002, 2003, where essentially there were additional charges added to bills because of drought. But we formalized it into a surcharge so our customers can understand what is expected of them and what the impact could be. And this is a large communications concern for us. We'll have to make sure that everybody's aware of this. In 2013, it was the last time we had 2-day-a-week watering restrictions, but we had an additional stage. And that stage did not have the drought surcharges, simply had 2-day-a-week without drought surcharges. And what we saw was an increase in water waste, a substantial increase, where we saw water rolling off of lawns. People were effectively trying to overwater their lawn on those 2 days to make up for that lost day. The reality is that doesn't work. Plants don't absorb that additional water. It's simply either going down into the water table or it's rolling off. In those cases, it was rolling off. So that was actually counterproductive for us. So that's why we removed that stage. Drought surcharges provide two tools. And it's interesting when Fernando and I talk about how we utilize them, because myself from a conservation perspective, we use it as that incentive. We want people to be aware of what we're asking for them. And again, the more water you use, the more you pay has always been our philosophy with our tier structure. It applies to this as well. And so we're trying to give a financial incentive to meet our projected goals of 20% reduction in water use for stage one. From the revenue side, it still costs about as much to operate this utility, even if we are reducing our water distribution. It does seem a little counterintuitive in a manufacturing world. Say, if I'm not making as much of this product, it should cost me less to make this product. But in water, we still have to transport it, we still have to treat it, we still have those costs associated with it. Plus, we have the additional burden that we will have to probably lease additional water in order to recover our reservoirs after the drought. In the 2002-2003 drought, we talked quite often about how we had a great snowstorm in March of 2003, and that took us out of the drought. That was only partially accurate. It took Aurora out of the agricultural drought. We had our soil moisture boosted up, and it was much better for the plants, but it didn't help our reservoirs as much as it could have. It helped a lot, but it took us 2 or 3 years of additional water acquisition, mostly from Rocky Ford, so that we could recover our reservoirs and get them back to that 3-year supply we want to have. And so that's a very expensive proposition. So that's one of the things that a drought surcharge helps us with, is to help meet the financial needs associated with that. One thing, just so you're aware of, as we go through these drought surcharges, we noted one challenge with the multifamily and commercial accounts in the fact that we have never, there are some older accounts, especially in the multifamily, that they water their irrigation, they irrigate their common properties or common areas with the same meter, from the same meter that they also provide the internal water use for their multifamily units. So it's difficult for us then to separate out that indoor use component from the outdoor use. So we're examining that right now. We think we have a simple fix, but it probably means we'll have to come back to council with a new ordinance just for these surcharges so that we can accommodate those two tiers. One which is the indoor component, one which is the outdoor component, and would probably be affected by a drought surcharge. So this is the way the surcharges exist right now, and this is based upon the rate ordinance that was finalized on Monday. You will see that we do not, on residential, we do not charge a drought surcharge for residential in that first tier. The intention of that was a culinary, that's a life safety health, that is your internal water use. So that is not subject to a surcharge. The surcharges kick in then starting with stage 2, which would be that anything that's above that standard indoor use. It's still relatively small, 91 cents per 1,000 gallons. You can see how it starts to creep up as you get into the tier 4s. Again, the more water you use, the more you would pay. You can see in stage 2 how it becomes more aggressive, because we need to try to see that 50% reduction goal in outdoor water use, and this is a tool we need, especially in that tier 4. Stage 3, as we said, stage 3 outdoor watering use would be prohibited. So these are less surcharges as they are punitive. They are designed to ensure that you're not using your water outdoors. We will have enforcement, obviously, through water monitors, but if anybody decides to sneak around and try to water, they're gonna pay dearly. And this is fairly common. Some of these price points in stage 3 are fairly common in the West, especially in Santa Fe. You'll see actually they're essentially higher in Santa Fe for that reason. For multifamily, the increase in the surcharge increase kind of mirrors the residential side. Again, we're trying to work on backing out what would be that internal component for them. So that would not be covered by the surcharge. So there may be a shift in what these look like. Multifamily, our allocation accounts are given a billing allocation. So as long as they're up to 100% of that billing allocation, they're within that first tier, and then anything above that would obviously have a higher use associated with it. Commercial use mirrors it. It's a little higher, obviously, but that's also reflective of the way our rate structure is set, that commercial pays a little more than multifamily does. Again, the same factor here. We'd want to find those commercial entities that have an indoor use versus outdoor use. Again, it's relatively simple for us to identify that because we can go based upon their winter average, which we already calculate for sewer charges. We call it winter quarter average or average winter use. And so we can simply figure a way to back that out of the equation here. Irrigation, obviously, that's all outdoor use. It's 100% lost to us, so that will have a higher impact. It's again at stage 1, it's not extremely onerous, but we do want to see that 20% reduction in outdoor use. It becomes more onerous, obviously, as we advance the stages. So I did want to talk about a little bit about communications. We do have a robust communication plan, and we're revising it right now. We still have some staff on board that was with us in 2002, 2003. So we're working with them to see what areas are we missing. What did they see back in that drought that we're not seeing here? Obviously, we want to start communications early. This is not something you can do quickly. You can't tell people next week, we're putting this in place and it's going to have this impact on your landscape and it's kind of this impact on your bill. So we need to make sure everybody's aware of it. So obviously it's everything, all the outreach tools, general media, city outlets, all of our mail. We do a direct mail every year anyways to all of our customers, talking about our watering restrictions. We would boost that up and talk and have it very targeted to educate people on the surcharge impacts, for example, the day of week calendars that we would like them to follow, and what the enforcement measures are associated with that. Our targeting obviously is our residential users. That's our biggest base here. But something we're also targeting, and we've already started this targeting, is HOAs and metro districts. And we're splitting that out into a couple discussions here because some HOAs have a lot of common space that they need to manage and maintain. So they need to be aware how it's going to impact them and how they communicate to their residents, but also those that have covenant oversight on single-family residents. So we need to have them understand what we're asking, so we're not in contradiction with their covenants. Part of this is going to be, Brooke touched on it, was a delineation of dormancy versus dead. And there's perception that if grass goes brown, you're killing your grass. Actually, even Kentucky bluegrass is very drought resistant. It goes dormant. It goes a little yellowish, and there's a difference between that and dead. Quite a difference between it. So we're already starting to develop our materials to communicate what that difference is. So people understand this is actually still healthy landscape. It's simply not green as you would like it to be. In 2-day-a-week watering, you should be able to keep it green except for in extreme heat. If we end up with a July and August where it gets multiple days of 100 degrees, it will go dormant, but it will also bounce back. If we have a summer like we had last year, where we had a great monsoonal rain, you're going to see cycles where it goes dormant, pops out, and goes dormant again. So it's all part of grass's natural cycle there. So the other, obviously we have to reach out to the commercial entities, especially those with large properties, and some of our, biggest, or some of our best tools obviously are city employees. 4,000 city employees who can talk to our customer base. 500 Aurora Water employees who are on the field all the time. Let's give them the material so they can talk to people as well out there. So again, we'll be working across all channels. Obviously, we'd welcome the opportunity to come speak to board meetings as well. It's a great opportunity to talk to the influencers in your community. And we'll be attending a lot more events this year than we did last year. We're looking for some of the smaller events. I know Councilmember Sundberg saw me at a couple of smaller events over the summer, kind of test driving this. So we're identifying those elements to get out where we can talk with the community as well and answer those questions. So that was a lot. And hopefully I didn't lose you completely in all that, but if there are any questions, I would welcome them at this point. So.
Thank you, Greg. Councilmember Gardner, any questions?
No, I don't. Thanks, Greg. It was a great presentation. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Just real quick, Greg, I
Sure.
may have touched on this and maybe I read it correctly. In a stage 3, fire hydrants are not allowed.
Fire hydrant used for anything other than fires.
There you go. Okay.
We would never cut off fire department.
Not gonna let the city burn down. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that we wouldn't be too popular. No.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for the presentation, and I had a question about the education, but you covered that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 8, miscellaneous matters of consideration. I may be forgetting something. Marshall, anything?
No, we do. I think the next item is the next meeting confirmation, but that's really the only other thing is that we do have, we are hoping to be able to meet in December because we're wanting to bring a more detailed discussion on PFAS, the actions we're taking, the costs of those actions to ensure that we're not having PFAS above reporting levels get out into our distribution system. So we want to make sure that the committee has a good understanding of that and is supportive of the direction that we're headed. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. So if and when we meet in December, the 3rd Wednesday is the 21st. So we'll reconvene on that.
Could we, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. I'm going to be on a plane on the way to Mexico on the 21st. And so I don't know if we could find an alternate date, or alternatively, if Councilmember Lawson is available, then it's okay to proceed without me. If she won't be here for that, I will not be either.
Okay, maybe we could hear from KCU or Marshall about some alternative.
Yeah, we definitely look at some alternative dates. It'd be great, Curtis, to have both you and Angela at that discussion. I think it'll be pretty interesting to both of you. And
No, and that time of year, I mean, is pretty open, so I should be able to be pretty flexible. I will be on the plane during that time, so won't be able to jump on a call.
would the day before work, the 20th?
Yeah, so right now all I have on the 20th is an 11 to 12. Otherwise, I'm wide open that day.
Okay.
The 20th for myself is wide open.
We want to move it up a day, and it sounds like a little earlier, maybe do 9:30 to 11 on the 20th.
That would work great for me.
I believe that would work great for me, and perhaps get a reminder or an invite.
Yeah, we'll
Absolutely.
yeah, Casey will coordinate also to confirm with Council Member Lawson that it works for her, and we'll shoot for 9:30 to 11 on the 20th. Hopefully that works for Angela as well.
Yes. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Here it is 12 noon, and we're concluding the meeting. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Right on time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.